everybody. My name is Erica Saylor, and welcome to the Life Unites Us July webinar, Breaking the Chains, Overcoming Self-Stigma. I'm going to start today by covering a few Zoom items, then moving on to an overview of Life Unites Us, and then we will hear from our speaker. After we've heard from our speaker, we'll have time for questions and then wrap up for the day. Once the webinar ends, you will be directed to take a survey. We really appreciate your candid feedback on the webinar so we can continue to improve and offer the most relevant topics to you. If for any reason you aren't directed to take the survey, you should receive a follow-up email from me that will have the link. I do also want to mention that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted along with the slides later this week. Also, if you want to drop your name, your organization, and where you're from in the chat, we would love to see who is on with us today. If you do have any questions for our speaker or about Life Unites Us or any of the content covered today, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A feature and not the chat. We love the chat just to kind of keep things open and flowing between participants, but it's a lot easier for us to filter down through questions for our speaker if you drop them in that feature. So we would appreciate if you do that. If for any reason you get disconnected from Zoom, please retry the original link. And if for any reason you're unable to get back in the meeting, as I mentioned, this is being recorded and will be posted later this week. Moving on to learn a little bit more about Life Unites Us. Life Unites Us is a project developed to reduce stigma and substance use disorder. This is done by using a people-forward approach that aims to connect individuals through stories. Through research and practice in anti-stigma work, we have found that connecting people through their stories and similarities can and will reduce stigma. In order to do this, the team records stories of community members, real people across Pennsylvania, stories of both personal recovery and as an ally to someone in recovery. Short stories are then produced and featured on the Life Unites Us website and social media. The intent is that by sharing stories of hope and resiliency, we can prove that recovery is probable, reducing stigma makes recovery more likely, addiction is treatable, those living with an addiction are just like everyone else, and those living with substance use disorder are so much more than their disease. As I mentioned in the last slide, the campaign can be found online. The website features a library of resources that are shared across social media platforms. There's the social media and website information there. The great news is that with this campaign, you can actually join us by following and sharing the campaign. If you're part of a larger organization or effort, we would love to invite you to become a partner with Life Unites Us. If you're interested, you can email the info@Life Unites Us email or email Ashley Narvaez directly at anarvaez@shatterproof.org, and we will get you connected up with the campaign. Now that we've heard about the campaign and why we're here, let's move on to our speaker and the presentation section of the webinar. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Janice Olson. Janice is the Director of Operations at Sages Army, Inc., a recovery community organization, and has been in this role for almost 3 years. Sages Army is dedicated to providing support, education, and advocacy for individuals in recovery and their families, promoting multiple pathways to recovery and fostering a stigma-free community. Janice brings over 8 years of experience in providing peer support services across various recovery and treatment settings. With an associate's degree in psychology and a multitude of social service certifications, she is committed to supporting individuals who use drugs and their loved ones with empathy and respect. Janice is particularly passionate about advocating for women with children, striving to secure more resources to serve this underserved population and help mothers achieve long-term recovery. As a proponent of criminal justice reform, she has spearheaded initiatives to keep individuals on parole and probation out of jail and guide them towards appropriate treatment and recovery avenues. She believes strongly in destigmatizing people who use drugs and the formerly incarcerated, promoting multiple pathways to recovery. Currently, Janice is pursuing her bachelor's degree, furthering her education to better serve the recovery community. In addition to her professional endeavors, Janice is a devoted wife and mother. She seamlessly balances her family life with her professional responsibilities, exemplifying dedication both at home and her advocacy work. Her passion for helping others and her commitment to breaking the stigma surrounding substance use and recovery make her a compassionate and effective leader in the community. And with that, Janice, I will turn it over to you.
Hello. So I want to thank Erica for asking me to speak on this very important topic. This topic is very, very passionate towards me. It really hits home with me. This is something that I personally have dealt with since being a child, and just very honored to speak on this. Just asked to let you know that this is my first time doing a webinar, so I am a little bit nervous, but I am just very excited to be able to put this together for you guys. And I hope that you're able to take something home to help you break the chains of self-stigma and help somebody overcome self-stigma. So like Ashley said, I've been working in the field for 8 years, and I have probably worked with over 30 individuals, being a CRS for 8 years, and whether they were actively using drug, in treatment, in the community, in the recovery community organization that I work in right now. So I have had a lot of approaches and different experiences with individuals and how they've been faced with stigma and the different forms of stigma. And this presentation will go over that. So I figured I added this slide in here. I know that most people that are attending probably know that what substance use is and what addiction is, but I like to put that in there, the definition, and I have it listed here, the American Society of Addiction Medicine definition listed here, just so people know that, you know, this is a chronic disease, you know, this is a brain disease, just so this kind of falls into, you know, my topic and why. So it's there for looking. I'm not going to go over and read it. Like I said, most of you probably know it, but people that maybe will review this after the fact that maybe don't understand this, they could review that. So what is stigma? So stigma is the mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. So I felt like putting the definition on there because every time I read that, it just gives me chills. And the main word that I feel like affects me the most from this definition is mark. So when I think of mark, I think of something that is permanently there. I think of like a tattoo. You know, I have a couple tattoos. They are there permanently. I guess you can get them removed these days, but I think when I think of mark, I think it's something that will follow you forever. And like, this is a mark of disgrace. So that's why I added that in there. So I was thinking, like, if another things, imagine if we marked people that have cancer or diabetes with that, you know, it's not them as a first person, it's more we're marking them by their disease. So just a good quality in there to add in there. But I did put this quote in here that really sticks with me. And it's from William White, author and recovery advocate. It says, words have immense power to wound or heal. The right words catalyze personal transformation and offer invitations to citizenship and community service. The wrong words stigmatize and disempower. And that just kind of goes with what that definition is up here. You know, you see all of that picture up there, all the different things: shame, dishonor, embarrassment, humiliated, guilt. You know, that's what people feel when they are stigmatized for having substance use disorder. And if we could start using more first person language or better language to represent somebody that is human first, and then recognizing that, yes, they might have substance use disorder after that. So this leads me into my next topic on labeling and internalizing. This labeling is such a huge thing. The first, you know, bullet point here is labels such as addict, junkie, or user. I absolutely cannot stand that middle word junkie. It's hard for me to even use that or do that. These labels do dehumanize individuals and reduce them to their substance use. So I'm going to speak because out of the 8 years that I've been working in the recovery field, I've worked in the recovery field in a treatment center, in a hospital-based facility, in the community, and in a recovery community organization. So I've met people in all different areas, all different walks of the recovery field. And I still remember getting a call from the hospital and going to see a young kid. He was 20 years old, going to a really nice college in Pittsburgh, came from a very good family, and, you know, was struggling with his alcohol use and wrecked his car. And I went in just to talk to him. I was called, hey, recovery specialist, come talk to him. And he immediately went to, during our conversation, is, well, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not an addict. And I said, well, no one ever said that you were those things. So just that label kind of puts you into that stigma. And I just remember the fear in that young kid's eyes. So why it's really important to use, more first person language. This kind of like the impact of internalized stigma too. This kind of leads into self-stigma, because we take on these negative labels. When I say we, I'm a person that is in long-term recovery. I am 12 years. I used an abstinence-based approach from substance use disorder, and opiate use disorder was my main issue. And I know, because as someone that has dealt with self-stigma, I know what it's like to feel shame and guilt and addict and all of that. When I actually came to work at the recovery community organization that I'm at now, someone that was here prior to me was really, this is when like the first person language movement was happening. And I always labeled myself an addict. This was probably about 3 years ago when this was going on. And he was like, you're not an addict. He's like, you're someone that struggled with using drugs. And, that like kind of was like, what do you mean by that? So I started practicing all these first person language movement things towards myself, definitely towards the people we were serving, but towards myself. And after about 6 months doing that, it took some time to practice using the right language. I now do not want to be labeled an addict. I feel like it does dehumanize me, because that is not who I am. I would like to think I'm a human first. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I was somebody that in my past struggled with opiate use disorder. So I do think that that's really important, because it does lead to shame, guilt, self-esteem. It hindered my recovery process. And I know with the countless people I've served, it's definitely hindered their recovery process and made them feel unworthy. So promoting these positive changes would be to use first person language, what I was just discussing, instead of addict, use a person with substance use disorder, a person who used drugs, a person who's in long-term recovery, whatever fits during per individual and whatever pathway where they're at in their walk in their substance use. So empathy and understanding, like empathy is the biggest thing. Anybody like I said, I work with people that are actively using drugs, and meeting them, talking to them the same way I would talk to somebody that has multiple years. It has over a decade of recovery. They are treated the same. So everybody is human. And I just feel like that is something that we need to practice more in every area, even if it's not in the drug and alcohol realm of this. Yeah, so supporting individuals to building recovery, a positive self-identity, and seeking recovery. So that would be a good way to help promote positive change so individuals are not internalizing stigma. Okay, so we're going to go over the differences of stigmas for people in recovery. So there is the public stigma, which is negative stereotypes and discrimination from society. That is the one I feel like most people associate with, which I feel like also chimes in with the self-stigma. But the negative stereotypes that we're hearing from society, that the news is putting out there, they're never really promoting what's positive happening. It's getting better, but we are consistently hearing, that they're criminals, they're lock them up, they're doing these things. So when we consistently hear that, that's where we take on these labels, the slide before, that cause self-stigma and internalize that the public stigma of that, leading to self-criticism, shame, and all of that. So that's self-stigma. And then courtesy stigma experienced by family members because of their relationship to someone with substance use, and is courtesy stigma. So we here at Sage's Army, we work with family members. We have a family group. We work with a lot of family members here at Sage's Army that love somebody with substance use disorder. And a lot of them that have come to our family group have typically been suffering in silence, not seeking help for years, months, not knowing where to go until someone says, hey, why don't you go check out this local recovery community organization, Sage's Army. They have a family group there, and they're very supportive. So then because they finally opened up to somebody, and they go there and they're like, oh my gosh, why have I not been coming here? So they're so afraid to even talk to their loved ones, somebody that they work with, anybody, friends, acquaintances, to let them know that maybe the person they're loving is struggling because of, once again, this public stigma and this negative stereotype of doing that. It's very big. Just listening to the family share and having them come here and having an open community where they can talk and other people relate and they don't judge them and they feel welcome has been truly an honor to be a part of an RCO that does such a great job working with families. Vicarious stigma. When family members experience emotions such as sadness or anger because of witnessing their loved ones face stigma associated with their SUD. So when I was putting this all together, I have 4 children, two that are adult children and 2 that are younger children. And what comes to my mind is not really substance use. I have a daughter who has autism. And she struggles mostly with high sensory issues and then also social cues. And I struggle with vicarious stigma because I noticed when parents leave her out in school. I notice when she tries to play an activity that, like, say she's actively involved in the aqua club. That's what she does right now. I noticed that she's coached differently because of that. So I consider that. I take on what the sadness and anger that she witnesses in that. So that is the same thing that a loved one could be feeling too when they know that their son, daughter, wife, boyfriend, whatever that would be, who they love, that they're witnessly like experiencing it, whether it's from the public, whether it's from their self, whether it's from structural, that you take on those emotions with them. So structural stigma, policies and practices that limit opportunities and resources. So I would like to say that, like, all of these hit me home, but I would say self-stigma and structural stigma are the 2 that really are what I'm passionate about. I would have to, share an example on structural stigma. So my mother is somebody who struggled with alcohol, and she had a brain aneurysm at a public place and was taken to a hospital immediately. Everyone knows typically people with brain aneurysms pass away because they're not around anybody. But my mother was taken to a local hospital in that area, and her boyfriend at that time had said that she was withdrawing from alcohol use. And so for 6 to 8 hours, no one went and saw my mom because they thought that all of those reasons that she was experiencing stroke-like symptoms were just alcohol use. She was never seen by a doctor until, like, my older sister was able to get a doctor and say, hey, like, listen, I know what's going on. She was a state certified nurse at that time. She's like, my mom's showing stroke-like symptoms. Something else is going on other than alcohol use and withdrawals. So at that time, she was pulled in. And so my mom was in a hospital for 6 to 8 hours while an aneurysm was bleeding on her brain just because of they thought it was alcohol. She did end up passing away from that. So she did die from an indirect result of alcohol use disorder. I also, like I said, I worked at a hospital-based facility providing peer support services 24/7. And I'm not talking anything bad about this hospital. I'm not going to list their name. I was grateful that they got an organization in their community involved to provide 24/7 peer support. But there, was an individual that I went to go see who was very delirious. I couldn't even talk to him on the phone. So I went in person, drove there to the hospital, tried to talk to him. This individual was definitely delirious, talking to people that weren't even there. He was the only person in there. And I told the doctor, 3 hours went by since I, got the call and got into there, because that 3-hour window to get there. And I said, have you even spoke to this gentleman? I said to the doctor, and like, oh no, we're just waiting for you to come. And I said, well, I don't think anything that I can do as a recovery specialist can help this individual. And he's like, I don't understand. I was like, well, I couldn't even get him on the phone to do an intake because he's talking to people that aren't even there. Long story short, the doctor comes in and, looks him down, evaluates him right in front of me. By that, it was like very eye-opening and like alarming, and realizes this guy had diabetes and had his had one of his toes cut off for being diabetic, not just like a month ago. Clearly must not have saw this in his chart, nothing, and it was horribly infected. And he's like, well, we clearly don't need you. We're going to be admitting him. And I just think of like things like that. At least I was able there to point that out. I just think of all the consistencies that are happening within hospitals and our healthcare systems, where individuals are being pushed aside because they're not even coming in for substance use disorder, but it's being heard. It's being heard from either anywhere in the ER that, oh, it's just substance use disorder. So that those the typical way that you handle somebody coming into an emergency department is their substance use is their number one. So they're being marked. So they're not human first. They're a person that has substance use disorder first. So that's something I'm real passionate on. I kind of stayed a little too much on that. So I apologize, guys. So impact on recovery, barriers to accessing treatment and support, increased feelings of isolation and hopelessness. Definitely all of this is the same way. A lot of people do not want to go into the ER to say that they have substance use problem, or they go into the ER because they don't know what to do, because they've never known that, like, oh, there's a treatment center. How do I call and do this? And then they get treated poorly. So that is something definitely have accessing the treatment and support because of stigma. So now we'll move into the main topic of self-stigma. So self-stigma is internalized negative stereotypes and beliefs about oneself. It leads to feelings of shame, guilt, and low self-worth. Pretty much what we just talked about in self-stigma. Like I said, I told you guys I'm a person with 12 years in recovery, and I still feel this way. I still sometimes can take on the public. I mean, I work in the field, so I am consistently hearing it in every avenue that I go to, every area that I work, in the prison system when I go into the prisons, into the courthouse when I go into the courthouse, and when I take someone to the doctor's office, any human service field, I still hear it happening. EMS, we're consistently trying to be involved in every aspect of the healthcare to, connect with individuals that are struggling with substance use disorder. So I'm consistently I still will take on that stereotype of that, and I have to, work through that and realize that's not who I am anymore, and that is not true about me. I am human first. So it definitely does lead to shame, guilt, and low self-worth. So imposter syndrome, I'm always saying that too. I'm always saying, oh, I have imposter syndrome. Or I don't want to make this all about me, because like I said, I work with a lot of people. We have a team here at Sages Army of 11 people that work here, where 9 of them are in recovery. And I consistently hear them saying, like, I feel like I have imposter syndrome because I feel like I'm not supposed to be where I'm at. Like, I'm a fraud even though I'm successful. So on to the next slide with imposter syndrome in recovery. So how it manifests: belief that recovery success is due to luck and not personal effort. Constant fear of relapse or failure. I feel like that one is more in the early stages of recovery. It definitely could be in long-term stages of recovery as well. But for longer-term recovery, it's usually the fear, like their belief that their recovery is just luck. It's not personal effort, that not anybody else that doesn't even have substance use disorder didn't get success because they didn't work towards it. So this definitely impacts recovery and undermines confidence in one's ability to maintain sobriety, and it creates additional stress and anxiety. So I am always stressed out and anxiety, and it always goes to that I feel like I need to be doing more and more, because I feel like I still carry this label of I need to try harder than somebody else because I have substance use disorder, even though I've been away from the drug or the alcohol for so long that I still feel that. So I know what it was like in early recovery, and I work with individuals early recovery that are consistently adding additional stress and anxiety when the alcohol and the drugs not even the problem right now. It's the fear of, not trying to go get that job, and being able to say, definitely if they have a criminal background, being able to go in there and tell about being a person in recovery. This is why I have this. This is how I move forward. This is what I've done in that process. So it does add an extra layer to an individual seeking things, seeking human nature, things that they need: a job, housing, and all of those things, transportation, credit, all of that. So I want to move into the topic that I'm very passionate on, and that is moms in recovery. Self-stigma and mom recovery. Every person that has substance use disorder has probably experienced self-stigma, but I know that it's an extra layer to moms in recovery. They definitely face unique challenges. They face the intense feelings of guilt and shame. Mothers often feel deep guilt and shame about their past substance use, especially concerning its impact on their children. This can lead to feelings of unworthiness, failure as both a parent and an individual, fear of judgment, the fear of being judged by others, including healthcare providers, family, friends, can be heightened. This can prevent mothers from seeking the help they need. Balancing recovery and parenting. The dual challenge of managing recovery while meeting the demands of parenting can be overwhelming. Mothers doubt their ability to succeed in their role. Social isolation. Self-stigma can lead to withdrawing from social interactions, support systems, making it harder for mothers in recovery, mothers to build a support network, which is critical for recovery. Impact on parenting. Feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness can affect the mother's confidence in her parenting abilities, potentially leading to overcompensation or disengagement from her children. Self-stigma is often associated with an co-occurring mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, further complicating their recovery process. So the self-stigma that I feel like that I'm a big advocate on is for moms with children is there's no resource out there. There are, but they're very limited. Actually this morning I was going over just so I had the correct numbers, so I could be correct in giving you guys this information. But on DDAP's website, I listed up their halfway houses. So DDAP has 40 licensed halfway houses in the state of Pennsylvania. Out of those 40 licensed halfway houses, there are 30 of them take men only. Well, 27 of them take men only. The other 3 take women too. But 13 of those are women, and only 4 of those are women with children. So for the whole state of Pennsylvania, only 4 halfway houses is for women and children. And I'm really big on halfway houses because halfway houses are typically, for people that don't know that are watching this, like a typical stay in like a regular detox and inpatient stay is 30 days based off insurance or where you go. It's typically 28 to 30 days. Then there's the halfway house. I feel like the 28 to 30 days is when you're just getting, detoxing, getting the substance out of you and getting all that. The halfway house is where the work is. That is where we are teaching life skills, learning how to live and, pay bills, all of those things that are really important, getting you acclimated to a recovery community, building strong supports, building a recovery capital. Recovery capital is very huge. And definitely that's why I push halfway houses on individuals that have a low recovery capital coming out of treatment, because it's very important to make sure you have that, because you have a better success of not having a reoccurrence with your substance use. So I really try to push a halfway house, and to know that only 4 of those accept women with children is like really saddening to me. I've known this, I just didn't know it was only 4 till looking this up this morning, because women with children definitely have another layer of recovery being a little bit harder and learning different things, because not only are they learning to take care of themselves, they are trying to learn how to be a mom too, and also be a person in recovery. So I always say for myself, like for me and my daily responsibilities is me and my God and my understanding has to be first, then my kids, then my recovery, and then my children. So I'm thinking, how do we put all 3 of these together if there's not any of those facilities? Now, there's a lot of facilities with women that they can go to women. So say a mom goes to treatment for 6 months, and because she went to a halfway house, and then we just get her back in. Not a lot of reintegration to learn how to be a mom, be a person in recovery. A lot of people go to halfway houses outside of their community too, and they're not even given the opportunity to get established within that community. So I do believe that that is something that is nationwide. That's not just the state of Pennsylvania, that we need to have more housing for women with children. Also, I looked up the number of licensed DDAP recovery houses. There's 312 right now. As of November 2023, that number has went up since then. But out of the 312, only 2 accept women and children. Now, some of them accept women and they have visitations with their children. They can maybe go stay with them on the weekend, or they can stay on the weekend, but they are not where the child can reside with them. So I'm thinking 312 and only 2. One is in Lawrence County and one is in Bucks County. We need to be doing a better job on that. That's something I'm passionate about. That's something I want to be advocating about, is we need definitely to be doing a better job. And every time I bring this up to, you know, anybody that's important, whether it's single county authority, you know, people in power, people in the government, and I say this to them, they're like, or I say to other treatment providers that saying, you guys should open up women and children. And they always say, well, it's not really a need. And I ask, well, why is it not a need? Why do you feel like there's more beds available for men than women? Is it because that we're not providing a safe and inclusive environment for women and children to want to come out and say, hey, I have a problem, and hey, I don't want to leave my children because this duty requires me to be here. I do not want them to go to foster care, or once again, they have a low recovery capital and they don't have family that can take their children when they go to treatment. We need to bridge that gap. I'll move on so I don't stay on that. So how does this impact on recovery? So it reduces self-esteem and internalized negative beliefs. It can lower self-esteem, making it harder for mothers to believe in their ability to recover and be good parents. Decreased engagement in treatment. So self-stigma can deter mothers from fully engaging in treatment programs due to feelings of shame and fear of judgment. And like, when I would think of this, when, you know, is the feeling of shame and judgment, is that like they feel like if they're in treatment, they can't even stay in treatment because they can't be with their children. And anybody that knows anything about children or has children knows that, like, if a mom were to step away from the system right now, like away from their children right now, they'd want to know where their mom is. And like that shame and fear of judgment is very hard. So it self-stigma definitely does that, because then you're thinking like, I'm a horrible mom, I can't do this, why did I do drugs over that? That is what the public puts onto them. Not to say that they don't have a brain disorder and they need to get help on that, but it's very hard to keep mothers engaged in treatment. So hence I know the reason why there's not a lot of facilities that offer long-term care. But I feel like if we can help advocates to take over, to be more first person language and more acceptance and more kind to mothers in recovery to come out and offer more of an inclusive environment for them, that maybe we can keep them engaged in treatment longer, and then also have their children be with them at the same time. So increased risk of relapse. Persistent self-stigma can increase stress and emotional distress, which are significant risk factors for relapse. Hindered social support. Social isolation resulting from self-stigma can lead to lack of support, which is crucial for sustained recovery. So social isolation, this is huge. Everyone says, just take your kids to a meeting, you'll be able to get recovered. You can go, like, because I'm always like, well, I don't want to go to a meeting. I hear so many moms say, I don't want to go to a meeting because I have to take my kids. I'm like, oh, well, just take them to the meeting. But then you have the people at the meeting saying your kid's being a distraction. I've had women come to me and say, by the time I leave the meeting, I wanted to use drugs more than I did when I walked into the meeting, because my kid was, 2, 3 years old, just being a toddler, like any other 2, 3-year-old wants to be, is interrupting a meeting. And they are feeling more stressed that they're doing that meeting. There's not a lot of resources out there for moms to be able to say, hey, can someone watch my kid while I go get a meeting? I still remember this individual. I was working with her. She was in with CYF, went to a long-term program in Pittsburgh, and I was working with her. She was getting her kids back, getting all this stuff, working towards all the right things, and she was doing good. So she was coming to a close, successful completion of receiving recovery services, doing great. I had worked with her for over 2 years, and I said, if there was one resource that you feel like you could have benefited from, what could it be, and what could I have done to get that for you? And that one resource was exactly what I was just saying, is that when she got into her place with her kids, her social isolation like was in because there was no programs for a mom to be able to go to where she didn't have to take her children. Now this girl had to take both of her two children on a bus, then to a meeting, then with her kids. It actually was more work than it would be to go to a meeting. Now, the great thing with COVID that happened is a lot of these meetings have went Zoom, kind of the way we're doing in this webinar right now. So there is a lot more meetings in different avenues where you can go to that, where you can go and actually get a meeting on that. But once again, if you have 2-3-year-old, that can disrupt you. You know, there are great programs out there like CCIS that, you know, will pay for childcare while you work or in school. But once again, working and being in school doesn't matter if you're not in recovery. So like recovery has to be one, so you could be a good mom and you can go to work and you can go to school, anything to help you be successful. So that I feel like that's a lack of. We need to get more programs, maybe get colleges involved. That's something that I've been doing at Sages Army, trying to reach out to local colleges that maybe are working in the childcare, early education field to get them to come here and want to like do some hours to collect for like watching children and try to offer during certain meetings that we host here at our recovery community organization. Mental health issues. So self-stigma is often associated with co-occurring mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and further complicating the recovery process, which is true. Women in recovery, like I said, like I use myself as this. That's why I wanted to talk about this, because this is really important to me, is you do have a lot of depression and anxiety when you use drugs and you've had kids. And that can definitely complicate the whole recovery process. Okay, so let's move on to the good stuff, because we can overcome self-stigma, and us as a community and anybody in here listening right now, we can help do this. So number one, we can challenge ourselves, challenge our negative thoughts, identify and dispute irrational beliefs about yourself. So whether we do a lot of SMART recovery here, so it's a lot of cognitive behavior therapy. There's a lot of different worksheets that we can print out for individuals. And that is something we can do. Anybody that's struggling with self-stigma and self-worth and thinking that they're just going to be a junkie, they're just going to be this, they're never going to imagine that, they're never going to get a job because they have a criminal history. So we can challenge that negative thought. You know, we can do different worksheets. We can sit down and work with them, you know, talk about journaling. Journaling is huge. Talking about that. So yeah, practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with kindness and understanding. People in recovery or people who are still actively using drugs, I feel like are the kindest people you will ever meet in this world. And they give so much compassion to other people. Like they can say the most beautiful, I can hear someone who is struggling so hard, and someone that's struggling really hard in their active use or in their life or just wherever they're at in their life, and they go to give advice to somebody, and you just hear the compassion they're giving that somebody. And it's like, oh my God, like that was beautiful. Definitely knowing that you're going through a hard time. And then but they can't do that to themselves. So, you know, I recommend if you're working with someone that's struggling with self-stigma, or someone's watching this right now that's struggling with that, try that on yourself. Be a little more kind to yourself. Be a little more understanding to yourself. 3, seek professional help. Therapists and counselors can provide strategies and support. I'm a big believer in that. So many people say this early in recovery, I don't want to go to treatment. I don't want to talk to a therapist because they don't know what I'm going through. I like to talk to somebody who actually knows what I go through that has substance use disorder. I was that, and I do believe people can do that. But, you know, as Erica introduced me in the beginning, I am a person seeking my degree very, very slowly as a mom of 4, but I am trying the best that I can to balance life. And because I know that there is definitely these individuals and maybe that are in substance use disorder have a passion to want to work and be a therapist and counselor. So I'm consistently being like, you need to give people a break and try it. And it is not a sign of weakness to speak to a therapist and a counselor. 4, connect with support groups, engage with others who understand your experiences. So I always am pushing that we need to be a part of a community that ups your recovery capital. And it's also important. And it does not, and when I say that, it does not need to be 12 steps. It does not need to be your basic NAAA. It can be a yoga. It could be a yoga group of women where you just are connected to somebody in yoga. It could be at the gym where you go to that. It could be at a library. Maybe you like to read. It can be anything like that. It could be an online forum or a chat group or a meeting that does that. I just think it's really important to be connected with organization that actually cares about your well-being and your mental health and your recovery. And then like definitely moms, like we need other moms to like be supportive. Like we need to build each other up. You know, you can read as many self-help books, which I have, being a mom, being a good mom, out of self-stigma, thinking like I can't be a good mom because I use drugs. I read so many self-help books. And let me tell you, they were great. They helped. They helped me actually be more of a leader in my job. But being a part of it, talking to other moms that are going through, or just being able to like vomit out the mouth sometimes about what's going on in your life and being a mom in recovery, it's really important. So I highly encourage individuals, like I said, whether it's not 12-step, it's being part of a recovery community organization. They're huge. There's the recovery support. You can feel welcome. You can bring your children. Just being connected is really huge. That's a great tip to overcome self-stigma. So another slide here on strategies to overcome self-stigma. You know, empowerment through education and self-wellness, self-awareness. I'm consistently going to different trainings, different webinars, having different trainings in the center for the community and my staff, because we need to be more educated and get more resources to provide better care to help individuals that are struggling self-stigma and make a difference in that process. Develop a positive self-identity. That is huge. Some days I have a great positive self-identity. Some days I do not. And then that self-compassion and self-care, recognizing that it's okay that the days I don't feel like that. That's a day I probably need to self-care. I need to decompress, go back, you know, be compassionate on myself, and it's okay. So community and systematic approaches to help self-stigma. Reducing societal stigma through awareness campaigns. Like I said, the societal stigma is really what drives the self-stigma. It is what what is out there in the public that is doing that within the institutions, within the hospitals, within probation, within you being at a public event and another mom knowing that you might be struggling substance use disorder, making you treat different. So I think, you know, that is a great way to do it, whether it is direct mailers, you know, campaigns, it is going to your local county, single county authority to promote that and say, how can I get involved? It is going to Pennsylvania, going to Harrisburg. How can I get involved to do this? So yeah. And then providing family-centered treatment programs. Pretty much what I was just speaking on, that there is not a lot of that. There is not a lot where you can take your children with you. And every time I ask, I hear, well, it's hard to get licensing around women with children. It's hard to get that. It's a harder step. There's a lot more boundaries with them. Are they a school age child or not? I've heard all these things. Well, how can we cut through the red tape? How can we get more women to seek help? Because people are suffering because they're afraid to seek help, because they're afraid, because if they do want to go get help, there's not a program that's going to take their they're going to take their kid off. Definitely if they need to be go through a detox process through alcohol or opioids or anything like that, that they're not going to be able to take their child. So we need to figure out a way to cut through the red tape for these individuals, so women are seeking more treatment. Believe me, women are using drugs and drinking alcohol just as much as men are as well. We are just providing them with an environment where they do not have the same access to treatment that men do. So community actions to reduce stigma. Like I just said, promote awareness campaigns, educate the public about the realities of addiction and recovery, advocate for policy change, support laws and provide in policies that provide stigma and resources, foster inclusive environments, create space where individuals feel safe and supported. So that is something that we do at Sages Army, and that I recommend anybody that's attending this, that, you know, get involved with a local RCO, your single county authority, you know, promote awareness campaigns. If you're speaking to any news channel, use first person language. Like I said in the beginning, you know, advocate for policy change. That is huge. That's something that I we are doing at Sages Army, but not at the level I'd like to, and something I would like to do. But foster inclusive environments. That is something Sages Army does. We welcome anybody from any community, no matter what. And we definitely know people of color and people that are in the LGBTQIA plus community have a bigger layer of stigma to go through. And definitely say if it's a person of color that is a mom in recovery, they actually have another one. So we tried to make sure we create that. So I recommend anybody that's here to make sure you're providing that anybody that would walk in, they would feel welcomed and all that. And then like also the awareness campaign. You know, you're on here at Life Unites Us. You know, I'm one of their CIC members. I want to be involved. Get involved. If you're passionate about stigma, you've been personally affected, or you love somebody that's been affected, get involved. Believe me, Life Unites Us will get you involved. They have many different things that they do where you can be involved, whether it's being a member or sharing a story, anything on their website. So I recommend getting involved. Different resources and support. There's different self-help groups, like we were talking about, online forums and communities, AA, NA. Like I said, the good thing with COVID is a lot of these AA and NA meetings has made them online, and now they can like hone in on like certain people, certain populations. One can be the LGBTQIA population, one can be moms, one can be just women. So there is a lot of there. So I recommend engaging and doing the research and looking within some of those 12-step program formats if you'd like to be in the 12-step format. If not, a lot of churches offer different programs, Celebrate Recovery, Life Recovery, that they offer childcare for you to be a part of that. But you know, that is a Christian base. So if that's not, you know, Christianity is not something you want to do, then, you know, I recommend other forums to be involved in. You know, there's Smart Recovery. There's a lot of different online platforms that you can get on. For families, family therapy, support groups, parenting resources for mothers in recovery. Know where all the resources are. I know that in Westmoreland County, Wesley Family Services, I can connect a parent in recovery to that they'll provide them with resources that they need to help, you know, maintain their recovery. Additional resources I put on there, you know, a couple different resources I did, you know, there's helplines. Helplines are huge, 24/7, where you're going to talk to a live person. SAMHSA has one, but I did put Sages Army on there. 24/7, you call that number right there, and a certified recovery specialist is going to answer the phone. So you're going to be, when you call, you're going to be met with empathy, caring, compassion, all the things that help fight and combat stigma, to make sure when they call that they're going to feel welcomed and not feel stigmatized on. So just good helpline information and organizations to look into. Couple different things for support for women and children. The National Association on Recovery, NARAN online, womenforsobriety.org. I highly recommend looking into that website. They have great resources, all different things. So if you're a woman in recovery and you want to be involved, it's a lot of it is online forums, but you can feel a part of a community, which is huge to maintain recovery and build a better, better self appearance of yourself and make you build yourself up. Educational resources are on there. So summary key points to take away. Importance of addressing self-stigma in substance use recovery. So it is important. Sometimes I feel like people hear it and just kind of push it aside, but it's important to build a high self-esteem for an individual you're working with or an individual that's struggling with it. Because if you don't have a high self-esteem, like the chances of like maintaining recovery is, you know, are getting lower. You know, like I said, we're not working on a good recovery capital to maintain your recovery. We need to have special considerations for women and children. I'm on that mission. I'm going to keep being on that mission. Just creating this PowerPoint and talking about it, it just fuels me. When I talk about stigma, definitely in the women and children, I am fueled and I want to go on and take on the world. I want to go to Harrisburg and fight and get some more organizations, or I want to go talk to some treatment providers and be like, what can we do? I'll help man this up. What red tape do we need to cut through? I'll go bring it down. So that is something that we need to be working better at. Call to action: encourage empathy and support with communities. I've been saying that throughout my slide. Being empathetic, meeting people where that, not making them feel like human first. Talking to them with like first person language is so important. So I will end with this. So I just kind of put this in here. I was worried that I wouldn't make through the time, but I do feel like I've made it through the time. So I will keep this very brief. But that is me and my 4 children. Like I said, I have 12 years in recovery. My son that is standing there with me, I lost my rights to him, and this was my first photo last year that I was able to take with him, and I'm working on building rights with him. My older daughter came back to live with me, and then now I'm a mom of these two beautiful girls that has not ever seen their mom use drugs or alcohol, which I'm very proud of. But a lot of it took me a lot to get here. I still remember my daughter Faith. She is the one who has autism. My daughter Faith, I still remember crying when I got pregnant with her and saying, I can't do this. I'm not a good mom. I can't be a good mom. I'm probably just going to use drugs again. I'm not going to maintain my recovery. I'm not good enough. I cried for a week finding out when I was pregnant. And that is just such a lie, but that is such the stereotype that so many people put on me with my son, with my daughter, that I'm never going to be a good mom. I just want to let you guys know that is a lie. I am not a perfect mom, but I am a good mom. And I just wanted to share that with you because some days I don't feel like I am, but I need to remind myself and be aware of, like, stop beating myself up. That is something that is not that's not who defined me. That was issues I had in the past. And I am a good mom today. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Janice. Wow, so powerful. Almost makes me tear up. Your family is beautiful. And thank you for sharing your presentation, your personal experience. It's obviously incredibly vulnerable to present and share, especially with this additional layer of you putting yourself out there. So thank you. And at this time, we will open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A feature here. All right. So while we're waiting here, I did want to ask you, Janice, and I don't know if you know these numbers, but is there research that supports having a mom having her children with her during her recovery actually improve success? Like, is there any figures or numbers that show that that is incredibly more beneficial as opposed to having them separate, actually impeding recovery efforts or treatment efforts?
So I'm not I don't have those, so I don't want to state that that's not, not there, but I can speak on seeing that I think it is beneficial because like I said, was saying in the post, the anxiety and the stressors and not feeling good enough in the early recovery, it, helps them stay in that to want to go back. So yes, I believe when they're actively involved, whether it's not living with them, but it's weekend visits, it's being involved, CYF, they're working great with CYF and they're engaged with them. I do believe it's helps give them a little push to, when they're not wanting to do it for themselves, they can, do it for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I feel like when you're not with your kids, you feel like you're forgetting something, right? So doing
Yes.
something incredibly hard, right? Going through treatment and recovery and then having that additional layer of in your brain, where are my kids? I certainly can see how that would definitely.
And I was separated from my two older kids, so I know how that feeling is. And I know right now, as someone, that is not struggling with active use today, I could not imagine being separate. I would not be able to bear that. So I got to treat that like human, even though that they're using drugs. Why should how should I feel different than that person that might have to be separated to go to treatment than how I would feel just separate myself. So, I don't think I would be definitely feeling like I'm missing something. They are a part of me. I need to be there with them.
For sure. No questions have come in yet, but I just want to say that if you do have questions for Janice that you think of after the fact here, after her wonderful presentation soaks in, her email is there on the slide. And she graciously has been willing to share that if anybody does want to connect or reach out with her or reach out to her.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, let's see here. We just had a few questions come in. Let me look here. Uh, this is more like a comment, but looking for your thoughts. George wants to know, he says, self-help fellowships usually have stigmatizing language, but smart recovery doesn't. What are your thoughts?
So my personal thoughts on that is and 12 step meetings helped me in my early recovery. They were definitely something I think they were very important. But since moving into the first person language, I do believe that smart recovery has been more beneficial of not feeling stigmatized. You know, I know people that are still actively involved in the 12-step community that have no problem calling themselves an addict. And I'm like, you know, you're not. They're like, I have to be, you know, so I believe that they fit. I'm so grateful there's so many different online forms of recovery out there that people can go to no matter what, you know, so whatever fits them. But I like smart recovery. We have 3 smart recoveries at Sages Army. So clearly we love the fact that there is no stigmatizing language in it. It is all like first person language. It is all about the behavior and how we can, you know, work on the stages of change.
Great for your answer, Janice. I think that's what's nice is that, you know, there's so many different options for folks on what works better for them. But yeah, it's definitely super interesting learning how that language can impact recovery. Someone wants to know a little bit about Sages Army and where you guys are located.
Okay, so Sages Army is a recovery community organization. We are located in Greensburg and Irwin. Our main office that we work in is Greensburg. It's in like Hempfield Township. So Carmen Capozzi is the founder of Sages Army. He lost his son to an overdose in 2012. And in turn, he created a recovery community organization right like a month after. And then in 2019, they got their first grant. So what we do now, though, because a lot of it was advocacy and education then, but a lot of what we do now is peer support. So we offer free peer support to anybody that struggles with substance use disorder or actively using in recovery. And we also offer free peer support for family members that love somebody that struggles with substance use disorder. We host our CRS staff hosts 13 different self-help meetings, all different, all recovery, smart meetings, family group, meditation group, recovery yoga. And then we also allow other fellowships to utilize our space. So NA uses our space, you know, AA, you know, grief groups, Al-Anon, GA, they all utilize our space. So it's like a place where you can come hang out. We have an awesome coffee bar free. We have a library free for the taking. We provide free peer support for people. Free transportation for people to come to the center and come to the meeting. As we all know, transportation and housing is a huge barrier to people accessing recovery services. So we will, you know, get them here. We'll get them to our pro-social events that we do out in the community too, like our rec nights in the park. So we do that. We do a lot of street outreach. We go out into the communities without Westmoreland County, go to businesses, you know, do awareness, give out Narcan, testing strips, anything that they're willing to take. We'll give you whatever we were willing to take. Anybody can walk in at any time and ask for any testing strips or Narcan, and we will provide that. We go into local businesses and provide a lot of education, and we do go to a lot of different schools. They can send in a request through our website, and we'll go into school. And Carmen, the founder, has a presentation that he does on, you know, education and awareness of substance use disorders.
Great, thank you. And it looks like Carmen popped a link there in the chat if anybody's interested as well. I also just want to share, someone did put in the Q&A that I couldn't tell this was your first time doing a webinar. You're a pro. I was so inspired by your words. So I wanted to share that. And then last question here, because I know we're at time. Would the CCIS place you were talking about help if moms needed temporary care for their children so they could go to inpatient treatment? Or are there any programs that help with this that you know of? I know there are some inpatients where you can take your kids, but there are restrictions, I believe.
Yes. So no, I do not know that. I feel like CYF would have to get involved and they would have to do like temporary placement while they were in there. And like if an individual didn't have a family member that was willing to take their child, it would have to be getting CYF involved. And then you're involved with CYF. I always tell women and women like CYF can be good. You keep doing the next right things, but sometimes people aren't ready and it could be bad and then they can permanently lose their children. But no, there is not a place like that unless it's like, you know, temporary placement within the, you know, the county's CYF program, Children and Youth Services.
Great, thank you. All right, well, we are at time here and also out of questions. So thank you again, Janice, for sharing the information and your story. As a quick reminder, when you click out of the webinar, there will be a link for a survey if you could take it to let us know how we did today and any other topics for webinars that you think would resonate with you. That would be super helpful for us. And thank you everybody for joining today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Hi, thanks.